Well, hello, welcome back to our weekly podcast, Design and Destiny, where we are desiring to align with the power movement of God as we search out how to grow and flourish and live deeply in God's purposes for our lives so that we can more fully release God's power and glory and testimony in the world. And if you're new to our community, welcome. If you like what you hear today, consider subscribing to our weekly podcast and check us out at destinymakers.org to see more of what we have to offer you. So today we're in our fourth week of a series titled The Seven Essential Steps Necessary for All Growth and Sustainable Outcomes to Occur. And if you missed the first 3 episodes of this series, I would encourage you to pause this episode and get caught up with the previous 3. Now, why do I say that? Because each step that I'm laying out for you is a sequential. They build upon the insights that you'll gain and the information that I'll give you from the previous one. So it's important to get the whole picture if you desire to become what you are not yet, but have the God-given potential to be. Now, you can find those other episodes they're archived on the destinymakers.org website. If you go to the resources tab at the top of the homepage, click on that. The Design and Destiny podcast will be your very first line item there on the drop-down menu. Okay, last week, I had you use your self-assessment from the Destiny Life Wheel. And again, that also is downloadable free for you. On the destinymakers.org website, also under the resources tab. I had you then do your self-assessment and write out what a 10 would look like for you in each area of your destiny wheel. Now, admittedly, that process may take some time, and you likely didn't get them all done. Maybe you did. Congratulations if so. But for the most part, it takes some time and some going back to. So if you were able to do just 1 or 2, that's great. Congratulations, keep going. And feel free to go back and wordsmith the ones that you've done so that your chosen descriptions have exciting, motivational words and a greater clarity of vision. Because honestly, for the most part, the very first time you write out a 10 or a vision statement or your goals in this way with clarity and vision, as I've described in the previous podcast, it usually doesn't take the first time. You want to try over and over again, really striving for more exciting words and greater clarity. And one way to see if you're on track is to read your 10 statements to another trusted person and see if they can accurately describe back for you your vision. And if they can't, then spend some more time trying to fine tune with the right words and the right types of emotions to make it more clear, not just for them, but also for yourself. Okay, so we learned that the first step to all, successful growth and sustainable outcomes, the first step is that there's not even any motivation to change without realization. And we talked about that. The second step was that you might have motivation and desire, but there will be no change without reflection. And that brings us to today, our third step, which is that there may be change, but there won't be growth. There's no growth without revelation. Realization, reflection, and the third step is revelation. Now, let me just review for a minute. If you'll recall, the objective of reflection is to define the vision, whether that's maybe a personal characteristic you want to change, or maybe a new habit or skill that you'd like to acquire, or maybe it's a new place God's calling you, whatever it is, whatever that vision is that you want to work on or you feel you're being called to. So once you define the vision, then you want to open up your awareness to what's keeping you in your current reality. So you have current reality and vision. And there's a gap in between. And so you do that by asking the question, okay, well, if God's given me the passion and the potential and the purpose for X, Y, Z, whatever that is, whatever that vision is, If he's given me all that, then what's keeping me here? What's holding me back? What's getting in the way? Revelation, so that was reflection. Revelation is that Holy Spirit inspired moment of, aha, that's what's holding me back. It's getting insight into what's keeping you from already possessing your desired outcome, your vision, along with what needs to change. Now, revelation goes deeper than the symptom level and the pattern level and the event level, like we talked about on the last episode, to uncover the false truths that you've adopted along your journey of life that are driving your current behaviors and outcomes. So let me give you an example of what I mean by all of this. Let's say that every other Friday night, a man comes home late from work and he blows up in kind of nasty, abusive arguments with his wife. The abusive arguments are the symptoms that are seen and felt. The pattern is that it takes place every other Friday night when the husband comes home from being with his buddies at the bar after work. The event level that triggers that pattern is that the man gets paid every other Friday, which allows him to cash his check and then go to the bar with his buddies. But the root, if you keep pulling back the layers, the root is that the man has a drinking and anger management problem, which quite frankly would require even deeper personal work to uncover the reasons for that addiction, those addictions. But if the man simply tried hard not to blow up at his wife, the symptom, and not address what's driving it in the first place, well, then his behaviors would simply surface elsewhere and things wouldn't change very much. So getting to the root lies or wounds or distortions in thinking, they rarely surface with the first insight. It requires more of a deconstructing, if you will, kind of peeling back the layers to get to the core source of what or when or where underperformance in that area first began. So you can do that by taking the first insight that comes to mind, which again is usually the symptom, unless you've already done a lot of personal development work in that area. But for the most part, that first insight is the symptom. But if you take that insight and then you ask yourself, well, why do I think that? Why do I think that? And come up with an insight. Then take that new insight and ask yourself, well, why do I think that? And you continue the process until you get to the end of when or what or where your core longing was wounded or distorted. And the ensuing belief from that was first established and is continuing to drive your current behavior if you don't change it. So let me give you a real life example of reflection for revelation. My colleague was working with a world-class athlete who was the domestique for a renowned racing team. Now, the domestique is the cyclist who rides in front of his or her teammates, including the celebrity rider. And the purpose is to cut the wind, that domestique takes on all the wind so that the other riders can more easily ride in behind in the slipstream. Now, this athlete was a very formidable athlete and very well known and very good. But he had a performance issue that really plagued him. He knew he had the potential for more, but he constantly got hung up. He got hung up when he came to the parts of the race where they had to climb altitudes. He tried various methods to alleviate his symptoms, including medical tests to see if it was something physiological with his lungs or whatever. He tried nutritional adjustments to see if he could derive more energy, like maybe lack of energy was the issue. That didn't do it. He tried different training techniques that might give him more strength and endurance. All in all, he saw little change from all these efforts. Well, as my colleague asked him to describe his issue, she caught a truth, a belief statement that he made just in the course of conversation. He wasn't even aware of it. He said, Well, I'm just not a climber. I'm just not a climber. So she asked him, well, how do you know that? At which point he began to describe all the symptoms and the patterns that he experienced, right? Well, after he exhausted every truth about his current reality that he could think of, she asked him this: when did you first know you weren't a climber? Well, he had to reflect on that for a bit. And then he remembered. He grew up cycling in the hills of his hometown in Western South Carolina. But when he was about 10 years old, his family took a summer vacation to the mountains of Colorado. That's some 10,000 to 12,000 feet above sea level. Well, as the family was biking in the mountains, our young athlete felt horribly sick. He couldn't catch enough air. He had a pounding headache. He was nauseous. His muscles were burning and shaking with weakness at the same time. He tried hard to please his dad and keep up with his family, but he just couldn't. He felt too sick. Well, his dad turned to him and said, "That's okay, son. You're just not a climber." Boom, he got it. He sanctioned and accepted what his dad's opinion as truth. And let's face it, he had all the physiological symptoms to prove his dad's truth, right? Each time as a young athlete, and then even as a professional athlete, each time he rode and he began his ascent, he would reinforce that belief. I'm just not a climber. I'm just not a climber. Well, when my colleague helped him understand that 10-year-old was experiencing altitude sickness and that his dad's offhanded comment was simply that, an offhanded comment, well, they began working on new truths about his athleticism that were much more aligned with the true potential he possessed. And guess what? His performance followed. It soared. So my hope for you is that you'll take one or two very important areas of your destiny wheel. You decide what they are. Just try this with just one, maybe two. Pray for Holy Spirit wisdom, and then spend some time reflecting for revelation. You've already described what a 10 looks like. Now, peel back the layers to uncover. You've already done this. You've described the vision. Now start peeling back the layers to uncover what's keeping you in your current reality. Use the process I described to get you to the root, not the symptom, not the pattern, not the event, but the root cause lie, the root cause deception or woundedness, or maybe just the outdated belief that no longer fits your life. And then come on back next week, where we'll lay out the fourth essential step necessary for all successful change, growth, and sustainable outcomes to occur. Have an outrageous, abundant, exciting week. We'll see you next week.